over the chapter 1 PowerPoint slides, giving you a little bit of background as far as the overall, as far as what business is really all about. So we're going to be looking at the idea of taking risks and making profits, that sort of thing, here in chapter 1. Again, this is kind of an overview as far as some of the things that's going to be going on as far as the course is concerned. In this chapter, we're going to be looking at the whole idea of what business is and building wealth, entrepreneurship, and what are some of the basics behind that. Look at the environment and then also the evolution of U.S. businesses. Again, we will get into more depth a little bit later on in the semester, all of these aspects. Now, first of all, we need to talk about some terms. Okay. Now, business is any activity where you're going to be providing some sort of good or service to somebody else. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to make a profit. Goods are something that's tangible. Services are intangible. So, for example, with services, maybe what you're doing is consulting. With goods, maybe what you're doing is providing and making paper clips. The entrepreneur is the person who actually starts the business. What they're doing is they're taking their money and risking their money to try to make even more. And what they're doing is starting that business with that. More terms. You talk about revenue, profit, and loss. Revenue is all of the income that you get. In other words, you're making sales. That's the gross amount of sales that you get. Profit is what's left over after you subtract all the expenses that you had in order to make those sales. If it's positive, if you have money left over, it's profit. If there isn't any money left over, you have a loss. Risk is inherent in business. Every business has risk. There's no way that you can eliminate all risk. And what the entrepreneur is doing is taking a risk as far as their money to try to provide a good or service and make even more money with it. Now, the higher the risk, chances are the higher the return, but there's also the higher probability of failure. The standard of living is what we all want. We all want a high standard of living. Now, that's the amount of goods and services that we can get with the money that we have, all right? The quality of life is that well-being that goes along with that standard of living. With a higher standard of living, hopefully you're going to have a better quality of life. Stakeholders are all the people who have something to do or are impacted by the organization, by a business. When you start thinking about stakeholders, a lot of times people think of only stockholders. Stockholders are just one stakeholder. Stockholders are the owners of the company. Stakeholders, people who have something to do or will have some kind of impact or be impacted by the business, might be customers. The surrounding community. In other words, you're putting together this factory to make paper clips. Well, you're going to have a surrounding community, and that's where you're going to draw your employees from. That's who it is that you're going to be selling your goods to. Environmentalists are going to be a stakeholder. Dealers, say you are the Ford Motor Company, all right? You're making cars and stuff, but you don't sell them. What you do is you ship them to the dealers. The dealers are the ones who are selling them. You need to make sure that you have a good relationship with them. You have your government, your suppliers, media, the bankers. There's all kinds of people who are impacted by and will impact the organization. They are stakeholders. Now, one of the things that we want to do, or a lot of businesses will do, is what's called outsourcing. In other words, there's a thing that's called sticking to your knitting. In other words, the company needs to focus in on the things that it's good at. If it's not good at it, what you do is you contract that out. There's a lot of companies and there's a lot of opportunities for companies to make some money as far as starting a business where you are providing the computer services for somebody, or you're doing the accounting or the payroll for a company. That's all outsourced. In other words, the company will contract with you. They'll pay you to do that stuff. You can make some money off of it. Insourcing, okay, is where what you do is you will bring things back in. So in other words, maybe you were shipping things out to be manufactured in India or something. Insourcing is bringing it back in. Now, a nonprofit is a company that is set up to provide some sort of a social service. They aren't trying to make a profit. What they're doing is they're not necessarily selling their services or goods or anything like that. They're getting donations and things. The thing is, they have to be run just as any business. For example, Johnson County Community College is a nonprofit, but it has to be run as a business because you have expenses that have to be met. You have goals that need to be achieved, things like that. Now, there's a lot of well-known nonprofits here in the United States, and these are ones that everybody has heard of. In fact, the American Red Cross. I was raised by the American Red Cross. My father was career Red Cross. And so when I was growing up, he would take me to areas where there were disasters. When I turned 18, I gave my first pint of blood. And so I was raised by the Red Cross. Entrepreneurs are exceptionally important to business and to the business environment. It's entrepreneurs that get businesses started, and they have an idea, and it's like, okay, I think I can make some money off this idea. Here's something that's not being serviced by somebody else. What they do is they start their business to do that. There's a lot of positives and some downsides to be an entrepreneur. So, for example, you have the freedom to succeed. You also have the freedom to fail as far as an entrepreneur is concerned. You're making your own decisions to a point. If you have a client or a customer of some sort that wants a particular thing, you may not be making all the decisions there. You could maybe make some money. You could also lose a lot of money. Downside, you're not going to get any paid vacations, and you're not going to get somebody else paying for your health insurance. You have to pay for all that. Plus, you're going to have higher taxes that go along with it. So there's a pluses and minuses to that. Businesses also think about what's called the 5 factors of production. In other words, you need to have all of these things in order to get your stuff done. So, for example, let's say that you are an entrepreneur. You have money and you want to set up a company that's making paper clips. Well, you better have the knowledge as far as how to make paper clips and what it's going to take and how you're going to get it out there to people. Then what you have to do is you have to take your capital, the money that you have, and you have to invest that in land. In other words, you're buying land or you're renting a place or something, leasing a place or something like that. And you have to build some sort of a building to put your business in. And you have to get your equipment and things like that. So then you're going to have to hire the people to run the equipment and to get everything done. So when you start thinking about, okay, so what is it that it takes to get a business going? What does it take to get products and services out? You have to think about the 5 factors of production that go along with that. You also want to be thinking about the business environment. Now, the environment are all the things that surround that business and the things that impact it. So, for example, in the business environment, you have your economic and legal environment. In other words, government is going to be setting laws and things that you have to operate within. You also have the overall economy. If the economy is going great guns, people have money to spend, they're going to be buying your product. If the economy is going down the tubes, they're not going to have money, you're not going to sell your product. You have the technological environment. In other words, what's actually happening with data and how is it being used and how can we take data and make information out of it. You have the social environment. In other words, what's actually happening with society that may or may not be buying your product or service. And then you have the competitive environment. In other words, what's happening with your competitors? Who is it that you're competing against? What is it that you have that they don't? How do you have a sustainable advantage over some of your competitors? So the government can promote entrepreneurship by thinking about what kind of requirements, what kind of laws are they putting on business that will actually squelch business? What are they doing to remove some of those laws or some of those requirements? What are you doing as far as the currency? What are you doing to minimize corruption that may be within the business environment? The technological environment, okay? Things like the computers and software and things like that. Technology also includes any of the manufacturing processes that you may have. So, for example, where in the past people may have been doing something by hand, the technology will enable somebody to use a machine to do some of that. You also think from the technology standpoint, the idea of e-commerce. More and more businesses are doing the e-commerce. If you think about it, Amazon's doing great guns as far as the e-commerce is concerned. In other words, you're making purchases over the internet, they're shipping it to you. That's business to consumer. There's also a lot of commerce that's going business to business. Businesses selling stuff to other businesses. You have a database, okay? In other words, a database is really nothing more than a great big storage area for all the data that you may have. And what you have to do is some sort of analysis and have the talent that can do the analysis to pull that data out and make information out of it. Where are our customers? What are they buying? Why are they buying? Things like that. Another thing to think about from the technological environment is the idea of identity theft. In other words, there's a lot of hacking that's been going on. You heard about various companies that have had their databases hacked where they released all their customers' information and things like that. One of the things you want to do is do everything you can to protect yourself from identity theft. In other words, do not give your social security number out to anyone, all right, unless you know exactly who it is that they are and for a particular purpose. Make sure you shred any kind of documents that has personal information. Here at home, I have a shredder where every once in a while I'll take old bills and things like that, and I will shred those things rather than just putting them in the trash. That way people can't get my account numbers. Use strong passwords. You know what the most used password is? Password. Number 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Folks, stay away from that kind of stuff. You want to make sure that you're using strong passwords to try to protect you, your family, and all of your data. Then you have the competitive environment. What's actually happening within the competition? In other words, who is it that's being the low price leader? Who is it that has the better product? What are you doing where you have a competitive advantage over the competition? You also have to think about what's happening in society as far as the demography. In other words, the people that are out there, how big is it? Who's it part of it? That sort of thing. Because one of the things that's happening is our society is getting older. People are living longer. We had this huge baby boom after World War II that is getting older and aging and moving and getting towards retirement. Then you also have a larger number of single parent families. When you start thinking about diversity, there's all kinds of laws that talk about diversity. Here in the United States, when we talk about employment laws, you cannot discriminate against, in other words, not hire or fire or not fire someone based on their race, color, religion, sex, national origin, age, veteran status, or disability. That's all there is to it. We have federal laws that go along with that. So you need to make sure that you're clear as far as what diversity really is. Businesses also operate within the global environment. In other words, I bet you anything. You go to your closet and look at all of the clothes that you have in your closet. You find something that was made in the United States. Good luck. A majority of there are hardly any clothes that are made here in the United States today. Almost all of them were made in Bangladesh, in India, in China, things like that. And one of the things that's happening is because of the internet, because of the technology, and because of competition, the global environment has really, really blossomed. It really can affect you in that as things change, it can actually open up new jobs, give you some opportunities that you may not have known that you had. And within the global environment, you also have to think about the ecological aspect, what's going on with climate change. And a lot of companies are doing more and more towards the greening thing. In other words, what they're trying to do is show they are trying to be good stewards of the planet by providing very green products, saving energy, things like that. The United States started off as an agricultural type of country. Everything we did was primarily agricultural. In the late 1800s, you had late 1800s, you had the Industrial Revolution, where starting with like the cotton gin and with the harvester, what was happening was more and more stuff was utilizing some sort of technology to make things better. And so what happened was more and more jobs moved from the farm into the cities and more into manufacturing. What's happening today is manufacturing, because of the global environment, because of competition, the majority of the manufacturing has gone overseas. And what's happening here in the United States, majority of the industries are more service industries. And when you think about your future, one of the things to think about is, what are you doing as far as building up your information and analysis skills? So these are some key points from this chapter. If you have a question, give me a shout.